Let's take a look at process costing in managerial accounting. Some companies make identical or very similar products that are produced in large volumes. They continuously process these products, moving them from one department or function to the next. In this type of company, the costs incurred are allocated to each department. Examples of the types of products that companies produce continuously include the following: paint, cereal, bread, candy, paper towels, chewing gum, soda, petroleum, and chips. Let's look at the process costing cost flow. Direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead can go into a work in process department. We'll call it work in process department A. They can also go into department B and department C. Each of these go through into each of the departments as needed and as used. Additionally, costs can move from department A to department B to department C, and finally to finished goods inventory. When the finished goods are sold, it goes to cost of goods sold. In process costing, all goods will require the same input, so the costs are allocated to the entire amount produced. Costs are then separated based on the number of goods produced and in process. The cost of units transferred out of each department is determined along with the cost of any units that are partially completed and remaining in the department. We use the cost of production report to summarize the production and cost data for the departments. On the cost of production report, the units the department is accountable for and the disposition of those units is going to be shown. The product costs incurred by the department and the allocation of those costs between the completed and partially completed units is also evident. Here are the steps for the cost of production report. In step 1, we determine the units to be assigned costs. Step 2, compute the equivalent units of production. Step 3, determine the cost per equivalent unit. And step 4, we allocate costs to units that are completed and partially completed. We're going to look at the weighted average method today. In step 1, we determine the units to be assigned costs. Units can be any measure of completed production. Schuyler Manufacturing has two departments, production and packaging. The company's production department will have two groups of units that are assigned costs. Group 1 are the units completed and transferred out in October. Group 2 are the units in ending work in process on October 31st. The department had 7,500 units in work in process at the beginning of the period and 6,100 at the end of the period. During the period, the production department transferred 9,300 products to packaging. The units completed and transferred out in October are 9,300. The units in ending work in process on October 31st are 6,100. The total units we need to account for is 15,400. In step 2, we compute the equivalent units of production. Whole units are a number of units in production during a period, whether they've been completed or not. Equivalent units of production are the portion of whole units that are complete with respect to materials or conversion, indirect labor, and factory overhead costs. Schuyler Manufacturing adds direct materials at the beginning of the process in the production department. The inventory at the beginning of the period was 40% complete with respect to conversion costs, which are incurred evenly throughout the manufacturing process. The ending inventory in process was 30% complete with respect to conversion costs. When we are doing weighted average, the percent complete at the beginning of the period isn't really as important. What we will need to pay attention to is how complete the conversion was at the end of the period. Let's start with the direct materials equivalent units. We're going to look at the whole units, the percent complete in the period, and determine the equivalent units. For the units completed and transferred out in October, there were 9,300 whole units. 100% of these were completed in the period, so the equivalent units is 9,300. In the units in ending work in process on October 31st, we had 6,100 whole units. 100% of the direct materials costs were added and completed in the period, so our equivalent units are 6,100. Total units and equivalent units are both 15,400. Now we'll look at the conversion equivalent units. For the units completed and transferred out in October, we had 9,300 whole units. 100% of those were completed, so we've got equivalent units of 9,300. For the units in ending work in process on October 31st, we had 6,100 whole units. But if you remember back, they were 30% complete at the end of the period. So we're going to multiply that 6,100 times 30% to get the equivalent units for conversion of 1,830. Total whole units would still be 15,400. Equivalent units of production for conversion are going to come out to 11,130. In step 3, we determine the cost per equivalent unit. The beginning work in process cost data included 6,900 for direct materials and 6,000 for conversion. During the period, the production department of Schuyler Manufacturing incurred $31,600 in direct materials costs and $16,260 in conversion costs. First, we'll do the direct materials cost per equivalent unit. We're going to take the total direct materials cost for the period, which will be the beginning and the costs added, divided by the total equivalent units of direct materials. For conversion costs per equivalent unit, we'll do the same thing with the conversion costs. So for direct materials cost per equivalent unit, we'll take the beginning work in process cost of 6,900 plus the cost added of 31,600. We'll divide it by 15,400 units. This comes out to $38,500 divided by 15,400 units, or $2.50 per equivalent unit. For conversion, we'll take the total conversion cost for the period and divide it by the total equivalent units of conversion. So 6,000 in beginning work in process plus 16,260 in costs added, divided by 11,130 equivalent units. This will be $22,260 divided by 11,130 equivalent units, and will come out to $2 per equivalent unit. Using the previous information for Schuyler Manufacturing, we can compute the amount of direct material and conversion costs to be allocated to the units transferred to the packaging department in the ending work in process inventory. This is where we are allocating in step 4. So we have the complete and transferred out in October. We have direct materials and conversion listed underneath. For direct materials, there were 9,300 units at a cost per equivalent unit of $2.50. Total cost for that, $23,250. For conversion, our equivalent units complete and transferred out was also 9,300. Cost per equivalent unit was $2. Total cost, $18,600. We're going to add these two together, the direct materials and the conversion, to get the total cost of complete and transferred out of $41,850. To calculate the ending work in process on October 31st, for direct materials, we'll take the equivalent units of 6,100 times the cost per equivalent unit of $2.50 for total cost of $15,250. For conversion, we'll take the equivalent units of 1,830 times the $2 cost per equivalent unit for total cost of $3,660. We'll add the two ending work in process total costs together for a total of $18,910, and the total costs accounted for will be the totals $41,850 plus $18,910 for a total of $60,760. When you prepare a cost of production report, it's just a summary of the information that you have computed in steps 1 through 4.